It was a war unlike any other. No battles, no armies clashing on vast battlefields, yet the world stood on the edge of annihilation for nearly half a century. A silent war fought in the shadows, a war of spies, of nuclear threats, of ideologies locked in an endless struggle. This was the Cold War. For 45 years, two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, competed for global dominance. The fate of humanity rested on a knife's edge as nuclear weapons threatened total destruction. But how did it all begin? And how did this war without battles shape the world we live in today? Join us as we unravel the story of the Cold War, its origins, its crises, and the game of brinkmanship that defined the second half of the 20th century. To understand the Cold War, we must first go back to the final days of World War II. The Allies, led by the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union, had just defeated Nazi Germany. But victory came with a price, and with deep suspicions. In 1946, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill warned of an Iron Curtain descending across Europe. The once allied nations were now divided by ideology: capitalism in the West, communism in the East. The Soviet Union, under Joseph Stalin, sought to expand its influence across Eastern Europe, while the United States, under President Harry Truman, was determined to contain communism at all costs. This led to the Truman Doctrine in 1947. A promise that the U.S. would support any nation resisting communist influence. The Marshall Plan soon followed, pumping billions of dollars into Western Europe to rebuild economies and prevent the spread of Soviet power. Stalin, seeing this as a threat, tightened his grip on Eastern Europe, setting the stage for decades of hostility. One of the first major confrontations of the Cold War came in 1948 when Stalin blocked all access to West Berlin, hoping to force the Western Allies out. But the U.S. and its allies responded with the Berlin Airlift, an extraordinary operation that saw thousands of planes deliver food and supplies to the people of West Berlin for nearly a year. The blockade failed. Stalin backed down, but the message was clear: the world was now divided. In response, the United States and its allies formed NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, in 1949, a military alliance designed to counter Soviet aggression. Not long after, the Soviet Union formed its own alliance, the Warsaw Pact. The Cold War had officially begun. The most terrifying aspect of the Cold War was the nuclear arms race. In 1949, the Soviet Union tested its first atomic bomb, ending America's monopoly on nuclear weapons. The two superpowers then entered a deadly competition, each side racing to build bigger, deadlier bombs. The space race became another battleground. The Soviets launched Sputnik, the first satellite, in 1957, shocking the world. The U.S. responded by creating NASA, leading to the historic moon landing in 1969.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
But while the space race inspired innovation, the arms race kept the world in fear. The Cold War wasn't just about politics, it had real moments of crisis. In 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis pushed the world to the brink of nuclear war. The Soviet Union placed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from U.S. shores. President John F. Kennedy demanded their removal, leading to a tense 13-day standoff. With the world watching, a deal was struck. Soviet missiles would be removed from Cuba, and in secret, the U.S. would remove its missiles from Turkey. The world had narrowly escaped disaster, but tensions remained high. By the 1980s, the Soviet economy was struggling. A new leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, introduced reforms, perestroika and glasnost, aimed at reviving the Soviet Union, but these changes also loosened the government's grip on Eastern Europe. One by one, communist governments collapsed. In 1989, the Berlin Wall, a symbol of division, was torn down. And by 1991, the Soviet Union itself dissolved, marking the end of the Cold War. After decades of fear and rivalry, the world had changed forever. The Cold War may be over, but its impact remains. The tensions, the alliances, the technology, it all shaped the modern world. And though the threat of nuclear war has faded, new challenges continue to emerge. What lessons can we learn from the Cold War? And how can we ensure that history never repeats itself? The answers are up to us.